coming through when the growth look good on you. Best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keeps dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
Yes. We're back, people. Before we dive into it, obviously England versus France quarter finals last night. As you guys can see, scrolled across the bottom, we are on the road to 150 subscribers. We are getting there. I'm hoping we can get there before, the end of the World Cup. But guys, if you like the videos, please make sure you're smashing that like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. There's so much more coming out over the course of the next few months. The Premier League's obviously coming back very, very soon before the ending of the month. So guys, please make sure you are smashing that like and subscribe button, and make sure that you're sharing this out with everybody you possibly know. Now that we're done with all the formalities, now that we're I'm smiling, but it's not even funny, to be honest with you. Look, England versus France. England ended up losing 2-1 against France in the quarterfinals. Goals coming from Olivier Giroud and a Harry Kane penalty. Along the way, he also did miss a penalty, but we'll get into all of that in a minute. Well, we're here again. 1966 and counting. 1966 and counting. England haven't, won the World Cup since then. And since then, let's say in my lifetime, I wouldn't even speak before then. So we're talking my first World Cup, which was 1998. Maybe a bit too young to really understand the mechanics of football. So we'll go with 2002 being my first real big memory. Yeah, since then, England have really underperformed, in the World Cup stage. If I'm being real, to be honest with you, I'm looking at it, and the only time I can realistically say that England, kind of overperformed or maybe even hit target was probably when Gareth had the boys for the last World Cup. Got to the semi-finals, obviously lost out there again. And, then he ended up getting into the Euro final against Italy, ended up losing out there again. We've now come up against tough opposition again, and we've ended up losing again. So, you can sense a common theme here, and I said it before the game, in the preview. If you guys haven't watched that, please make sure you check that out. I said it before. This game's going to be a bigger game for Gareth Southgate than it would be the players, if I'm being totally honest with you. Some of these players, as disheartening as it is, at the end of the day, they're going to be on to another World Cup. They're going to be on to another Euros. They're going to be on to their club form, club football, go back to their clubs, and everything is kind of hunky-dory, if I'm being, totally honest with you. And, for Gareth Southgate, this was one of them times whereby, unfortunately for him, we're in this stage again. This time now it's the quarterfinals. I don't know how people read this. A lot of people online saying they want Gareth out and things like that. But, the reality is we always got to look at the facts when we look at these kind of things. And, semi-final World Cup, brilliant. Finals of the Euros, fantastic. Minimum you got to reach is the semi-final. And even then, fans are looking for you to get to the final just because of, the crop of players that you have. Team that you've got in terms of the nucleus of the team, the squad harmony, all of these things that everybody seems to have praised Gareth Southgate for throughout his time here, which are things that, he rightly so, he should be praised for. We're now looking at it, and England have been knocked out the quarterfinal stage, so, we still got semi-final and final to go through, and they've been knocked out again by, a bigger team. Bigger nation, so to speak. Now, France obviously are the World Cup holders at this current moment in time, and they're looking to go back to back. So no mean feat necessarily by losing out to a France team. But when you've got people like Morocco who are into the semi-finals, big up themselves, it's going to be looked at as this was a disappointing tournament. Again, I always try to look at the facts. You look at England throughout this tournament, you look at the way that they've played in certain games. You look at all of these various things, and you think to yourself, and a lot of people have been saying, pundits, ex-players, ex-colleagues of Gareth Southgate, oh, this is, the best squad. I've heard Rio say, this is one of the best squads that he's seen during his time of, watching/playing for England. And it's like they're not doing better than the previous generations that we've seen, to be honest with you. Semi-final or quarter-final. Semi-final really good. Like I say, that's no mean feat. Regardless of who they've had to face to get there, even the Euros as well. Yes, it was an easy path to get to the final, and they were probably expected to get there with the team that they had, but nonetheless, they were able to get there. This time, they weren't able to get there. This time, they came up against a team, as I said, who were better than them. Now, when I say better than them, I don't mean on the night, because on the night, I felt that England were probably overall the better team. I don't think it was that big. I don't think they were killers or anything like that. Obviously, otherwise they would have got the win. But I think that overall, in terms of just general play, they're probably the better team. The difference between an England and a France is France will kill you at the right moments. And that is what England have lacked throughout. Again, like I said, my time of watching England, they don't have that cutting edge. And when I say that, no, I'm not talking about the players. I'm not talking like Harry Kane or Phil Foden or Saka or like any of these guys, Bellingham, whoever. I'm not saying that these guys are not good players, and for their clubs, when they're at their clubs, they do perform to a certain standard and a certain level. When you're playing for England, I just feel it was there. It's literally in England's DNA. It's literally there, and it's been there ever since 1966, to be honest, just not being able to get over that line. And it's just a constant thing. We can keep talking about the squad harmony. Gareth's got these guys, really playing for, really wanting to play for England, and everyone's really nice and happy and all of these little various things. We could talk about all of that. If it doesn't translate into winning, then it's irrelevant. All of that is irrelevant. You're doing the same thing that we've done under Sven-Goran Eriksson, under Fabio Capello, under Roy Hodgson, under whoever. Whoever we've had in previous tournaments, we're doing the same things, which is you come up against good opposition and this is the result. It doesn't matter what happens in the game. People can use the excuses of the referee. We can use the excuses of, poor officiating in the game. But the reality is, if you're good enough, you'll go out there and win. And unfortunately, you just weren't good enough on the day. It's just one of those things in football. The officiating and things like that, that's just excuses. I don't really buy into any of that. You should be good enough to win a game without the officials being able to somehow, affect what's going on, in the game. If England put away their chances, no one's going to be talking about the officiating. No one's going to be complaining. If Saka scores, he had a chance that was drilled across by Luke Shaw, no one's complaining. If Harry Kane scores that penalty, no one's talking about the officiating all of a sudden. It's going to be England won, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And that's it. We move on. And unfortunately, in this stage, as I kept saying, France have got those players who know how to do it, first and foremost. Again, this is a team who are coming off the back of winning the last World Cup. So they do have that know-how. They've got experienced players in a Giroud, in a Kylian Mbappe now, in an Antoine Griezmann. Players who have been there, done that. Hugo Lloris, Varane, serial winners, Lloris, serial winners who are in their squad, who just know what it's like to consistently win, know what it takes to get over the line. Now, we saw, again, I saw a lot of England players, complaining to the officials, Jude Bellingham constantly moaning to the officials, Harry Kane doing it, Jordan Henderson doing it, Saka doing it, and it was quite weird seeing Saka complaining the way he was in the game. And to some degree, I understand. I totally understand. Of course, you felt a little bit aggrieved. You did feel a little bit aggrieved in terms of some of the decisions that might have gone against you. But the reality is, I'm not seeing that from the other side. Even when there was the decisions that might have gone against France, they just kind of got up and, just kind of carried on, because those kind of things you can't really affect. At the end of the day, that's just the game. You know, the quicker people understand that that is just the game. You referees are going to make stupid decisions. Referees are going to, you're going to feel sometimes in some games the referee is against us or he's playing against us. You know, you're going to have that in these big key games. All of that, forget about it. That's all irrelevant. Winners just continue doing what they're doing, and they keep plugging away. And unfortunately, England kind of reared their ugly head again. You know, their DNA just kind of came out. It's very, and I do apologize to all Spurs fans, but it's very Spursy, very Spursy. If I'm being totally honest with you, you know, it's just, yeah, it just continued just flatters to deceive, man. I don't really know where Gareth Southgate goes from this point on. I guess it's just one of those kind of things. But look, I'm not here to really rant against Gareth Southgate. I respect what he's done, to be honest with you, but you know, inevitably, if you're not getting the wins, there's only so much respect that you're going to garner from a lot of people because, you know, they want to see winners, and people do feel like we do have the crop of players to go out there and win these kind of tournaments. Again, like I said, with no disrespect to Morocco, but if Morocco can make their way to a semi-final of a World Cup by beating, you know, the likes of Spain along the way, beating the likes of Portugal along the way, topping their group with Belgium in there, if they can do it, England should surely be able to do the same thing at the bare minimum. So, you know, again, alas, we're here. So we've got to kind of just move. But, you know, looking at the game, just looking at the stats of the game. Now, if you didn't watch the game and you saw these stats, you know, England with 57% possession, expected goals, that was probably marked up just due to the penalties and things like that. 16 shots, you know, in total, 3 big chances, 2 big chances missed. You know, accurate passing ahead, committed less fouls in the game, less offsides. You know, when you look at that straight off the rip, now this is just the possession side of things in terms of possession and shot side of things. So obviously there's a lot more to delve into. But when you do look at this, you think to yourself, well, England kind of did pretty well. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's pretty unlucky, which they were. I'm here to tell you that England were unlucky. They had their chances. I'm not even, forget the penalty. Penalty is one of them things, man. We can get on to Harry Kane as much as possible. Of course we could, and rightly so as well, because you know this was the chance to, you know, put your team ahead. This was your let me take that back. This was your chance to level the game, should I say? Sorry, and this was your chance to put England kind of back into that momentum, because I said when France went 1-0 at half time, I said the next goal is going to dictate kind of what happens here. And you saw when England scored and made it 1-1, it was a totally different game. England started to get a lot more impetus into the game. You know, they were using Saka a lot more, and France just couldn't deal with him. It felt like, anyway, they just couldn't really deal with him. You know, a lot of people have spoken about Kyle Walker, bar that foot race where he got completely dusted, which was always going to happen because Mbappe is clearly a lot faster than anyone in our back line. So, you know, it was always going to happen at some point in time. You just needed the right time to do so. I felt like he dealt with Mbappe pretty decently. Like, it wasn't like, I don't feel like Mbappe was overly amazing in the game. But again, that's just one threat. The main player of this game was this man right here. He was my man of the match. I don't know who they gave it to in the end. I don't really care, to be honest, because he was my man of the match. If you look at his heat map, this guy was everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Popped up mostly on that right-hand side, but he was coming in to the center of the pitch, almost forming another member of that central midfield. He was showing in areas that England just, I felt, couldn't really pick up. And for Jordan Henderson, Jude Bellingham, and Declan Rice, mostly Jordan Henderson and Jude Bellingham, I just felt like when something that Jerry, and big up Jerry, man, like he's, he needs to do an analysis on this himself, to be honest with you, because there's something that he mentioned about, you know, when, you know, Foden and who was it, Saka on the other side, when they kind of drop into the spaces, obviously it then leaves for Bellingham and Henderson to then run forward. It then obviously, if we then lose the ball in transition, it's obviously going to leave gaps. And I felt like it wasn't even, which was right by the way. I didn't even feel like that was even England's main issue. I just feel like when you've got a player like Griezmann, someone, again, when he's on form, so there isn't going to be much that you can do. But when he's someone who drops into these pockets of spaces, again, I don't even know really what his position was, to be honest with you. I mean, you can say I can't even say he played off the right really, because they had Dembele over there. Didn't play off the left because they had Mbappe over there. He was just floating, and he was allowed that free license to be able to do so. And once he started floating, it kind of left England in a bit of problems when he would pick up the ball, because now it's like, well, who goes to him? Because if Jude goes, you're going to leave a bit of space there. If Hendo goes, you're going to leave a bit of space in behind Hendo, which then leaves the gap for Mbappe to then run at Kyle Walker. Same on the other side, which, by the way, I felt that Luke Shaw did play really well against Dembele. Dembele didn't really have much of a sniff, I felt, in the game. Picked up the ball in good spaces at times, but didn't really affect the game probably how he would want to be able to. And Griezmann was, for me, he was the one. He was the key into that, France being able to tick. Now, France weren't at their usual free-flowing best because England didn't really allow them to. When we look at England's average positions here, you can see, first of all, look at Kyle Walker, number 2. Again, like all games in this tournament, didn't cross that halfway line. He couldn't. He knew, and he was one of it probably just about level with number 6. I think was at Jon Stones. Just about one of the deeper of the defenders. Obviously, he knew he couldn't. He couldn't be in Luke Shaw's position. Impossible. Can't leave Kylian Mbappe with that level of space. He'll kill you. He will absolutely kill you in that position. And we knew that we could deal with the threat of Ousmane Dembele, even though I do feel he's a bit tricky because he is both-footed, so he can cross from both feet. But like I said, Kyle Walker played pretty well against Mbappe. There were times when Mbappe did get in, of course. Like, there is no defender in world football that's going to deal with this guy for 90 minutes on end. It's impossible. He's one of the best players, if not the best player in the world on this current form. So it's not going to happen that you're just going to stop him for a complete 90 minutes. He's not going to do anything, and that's it. When he's on that side, he will be able to, affect the game in some way, shape, or form, just like he did for the goal. For Tchouaméni's long-range strike. Absolutely excellent strike. I'm looking at the positionings here. Again, Harry Kane dropping deep at times, which at times looked okay because Upamecano might come. It was usually him who would come and follow him out. Once he followed him out, you obviously then expecting Foden or Saka to then run into that space, in behind them. But again, France, I felt, were holding pretty resolute, to be honest with you. I felt like in that first half especially, anyway, it's getting boring, but it's like, I said it, England cannot be pragmatic in this game because France have players on the pitch who will, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it was Tchouaméni this time, whether it's Griezmann, whether it's Mbappe, whether it's Giroud, whether it's Dembele. That's about 5 players that I've just named and probably many more who can affect the game in some way, shape or form if you're going to play this pragmatic style, and I just felt like England probably should have played more on the front foot because you saw after the goal, once they started playing on the front foot, what happened? That is England's style. Most of the players in that England team, that is what they are used to. They play for most of them, if not all, play for your Liverpools, your Man Cities, your Man Uniteds, like the top teams in England. So they're the ones with the ball most of the time. Bar Harry Kane, who plays for one of the most defensive coaches in the world, the rest of them, they're used to playing free-flowing, attacking football. So you need to get them playing that. Arsenal with Bukayo Saka, he's used to that. You saw it in the second half. They just couldn't deal with him. They just could not deal with him. And I just felt like, why didn't England utilize that a bit more? Why didn't they go on the front foot from the off? Because I felt like you could have caught France napping that way, because France kind of wanted to play the game at their own pace. They wanted to be able to just kind of control it and contain England, because they know that obviously on the counter or even just in possession, they can hurt you. So, of course, if they can hold you for a decent amount of time, then yeah, why not? Why wouldn't we do that? But then if England played on that front foot a bit more from the off, felt it could have been a different game. But, that's he say, she say kind of things, if buts, ands, or maybes, to be honest with you. But when I'm looking at the average positions here, I think that was number 5. I believe it was Harry Maguire, potentially, or it might even have been Jon Stones. I don't know which one it was, but one of them was always deep, and they had to be because, again, Dembele and Mbappe are going to cause you issues. Saka was probably as you can see here, was the furthest forward. You can see Jordan Henderson was kind of in front as a right midfielder in front of Kyle Walker, obviously to help Kyle with Mbappe. Don't feel like he helped him that much because, Mbappe was having... It was a tricky one because if Hendo, I felt sometimes was getting caught up the field, you know, trying to obviously help out with the attack and stuff like that. And he was showing himself for Saka at times on that right-hand side. But then if England lost the ball, he's out of position now. And because he's supposed to be covering Kyle Walker on that side, which it seemed like that's what they were trying to do until Saka kind of at points decided that, you know what, I'm gonna need to help back, you know, back here, because there's even a picture where you can see Mbappe being followed by about 5 England players. You know, it's just one of those kind of things. So I got it to a certain extent, kind of leave Saka up there, allow him to do his damage further up the field, but they did enough to stop him. But again, you've still got other players, within the team. And when we look at France's kind of setup, England, I felt quite narrow. France were a little bit wider than that. Mbappe and Dembele, I felt they would push out to the wings a lot more. And they were kind of touching the touchline a lot more so than England's wingers. But again, that's probably just to be able to stretch the game. And you can see Griezmann in that middle. You know, France are effectively playing 4-3-3 or a 4-2-1-3 kind of formation, because Griezmann was always allowed that space, you know, in behind Giroud, and also allowed to just kind of float across. Their back line, you know, kind of exactly how I, expected it in the game. Their back line wasn't that great, to be honest with you. I felt like that was their weak link in the team. Midfield, I felt like they were pretty decent in that midfield. Rabiot and Tchouaméni, I felt like they were okay. Yes, they kind of tailored off a little bit into that second half, but again, that was just more due to the fact that England were pushing quite a lot. But it always felt in that game that France were always content with what they were doing. You know, it never really felt like France were sitting there and thinking, yeah, this is a worry. You know, maybe when England scored and England started to push a lot more, then yeah, maybe then did they start to kind of maybe reassess things a little bit differently. But if you've watched football and when you're watching, especially when you've watched football long enough, and you can see patterns in games, and you can also see when you've seen a team, you know, play a numerous amount of times, you know, when a team is kind of playing within themselves because they feel that we don't need to necessarily overexert too much energy because we're going to save that energy in the key areas or in the key parts of the game. So I felt like that's what France did, to be honest with you. England were trying. You know, they had shots. Bellingham shot, rifle. You know, Lloris saved it. Saka, again, like I said before, if he puts that away from Luke Shaw's cross, different game. Harry Kane penalty. You know, there's not really much to say on that, to be honest. He missed. You know, it happens. It is what it is, and we move. But it was just one of those kind of games where I felt England almost played into France's hands, and France just picked them at the times that they needed to pick them. And, you know, even for the Giroud second goal, like, you don't leave Olivier Giroud, you know, free like that in the box. He's the best header of the ball on the pitch. Maybe alongside, I would potentially say, Harry Maguire. Potentially, we saw Maguire almost scored as well. But when you're looking at someone like Giroud, you don't leave this guy in the box. You don't. He will kill you in that box. You don't leave him. When you do, that's just what happens at the end of the day. That is just what happens. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, it happened. You know, it happened. Taking a look here, I wanted to look at Bukayo Saka, because I felt like he was England's best player. And this is where we then get on to someone like a Gareth Southgate, because he ended up taking off Bukayo Saka, you know, later on in the game, you know, 10 minutes to go. I didn't understand why. He was, you know, France could not live with him at one point. There was before he came off, I'd say like a 10-minute spell where every time that Saka got the ball, he was dangerous. You know, down that right-hand side, he was causing so much danger. And I was starting to sit there and think, if you're going to take anyone off, you've got to take off maybe Foden for Rashford, which they ended up obviously doing with 5 minutes to go, which I felt didn't even make any sense, because it made more sense to maybe give Rashford a bit more time, you know, on the pitch to be able to affect the game, but you didn't. Fair enough. But Saka, nah, you don't take off Saka. You don't take off your best attacking outlet in that game. It doesn't make any sense. You know, you take off your Hendos, someone in midfield if you need to for a Sterling, and then change up the formation, which is what he should have done, but he didn't do that. You know, he ended up bringing on Mason Mount, who obviously won the penalty and things like that, because he was able to break the lines and get in behind. But, you know, for me, that didn't really make much sense, to be honest with you. You know, you needed you're gonna need to, when you're chasing the game anyway, you know, you might as well lose 3-1 than try and, you know, trying to go for it, as opposed to going for it but not really going for it. Maybe he had extra time in his brain. I don't know. Look, at the end of the day, it is a tricky one for Gareth, because the reality is, as I said, he might have been looking towards an extra time, you know, in the game, and trying to think, maybe if we can get to extra time with the players I've got on the pitch, I can set up how I kind of need to set up and get the guys back in and etc. But Saka had to stay on, man. Saka had to stay on. Like I said, England, unless he was tired, I don't know. Maybe he was worn out. No idea. But for me, Saka was the danger man yesterday, and I just felt like England fumbled the bag in regards to, you know, taking him, you know, off the pitch. But alas, these are the decisions that managers live and die by, man. Like, these are the decisions that will ultimately, you know, define your reign. These are the decisions that Gareth has made before in previous games, in previous big key games, and he has got wrong in certain cases. Last night, it just didn't really work out for him, to be honest with you. You know, it is one of those things. It is one of those things. Do I think France deserved it? I feel like that was one of those games where a draw would have actually been a fair result. I don't feel like anyone really deserved to win. I don't think England deserved it, and I don't think France really deserved it. A draw, if we could have had a draw, would have been a fair result in that game. But when you've got players like Giroud, when you've got players like Griezmann, Mbappe, Dembele, you know, Chouameni in the midfield, you know, someone who clearly can score from outside the box, you know, when you've got those in those kind of chinks in your armor, that's going to help. That's going to help, you know, moving forward. But where do England go from here? No idea. I haven't got a clue what they're planning to do with someone like Gareth Southgate. Do you keep him? Guys, let me know in the comments. Would you keep Gareth Southgate? Would you let him go? If you do let him go, who comes in to be able to manage these guys? Do England need like a different type of manager? Do England need someone else with a different type of vision, kind of bringing them forward, different type of football, potentially bringing them forward, maybe football that will allow the team to express themselves on a far more yeah, I would say, yeah, would you want someone to come in and, yeah, just allow them to express themselves? I'll leave it there at that, actually. To be fair, I was going to say something else, but would you want someone to come in and allow them to be able to express themselves? Because I feel that when England do express themselves, they're a really good team. They've got the players to be able, the Fodens, the Sakas, the Rashfords, the Harry Kanes and stuff like that, to be able to do so. And when they do, we'll see. Obviously, Jordan Henderson, this is his last tournament. Well, it should be his last tournament for England. So now England are going to be probably looking at a midfield of Declan, Jude, and Calvin Phillips, more than likely, unless a new midfielder comes up from somewhere and can kind of upset the apple cart. But, you know, disappointment for England. Disappointment. They up until last night, they had a decent tournament. But, you know, like it was, like I said in my previews before, I was always looking at that USA game. And that was always the game I looked at as a marker for England. That's where I was judging them. I wasn't judging them off the Iran game or the Wales game or the Senegal game, because I felt like those teams were obviously a lot worse than England in terms of what they were going to offer as a threat to England. And USA were the team that I looked at and thought, yeah, when you come up against these kind of teams, really, really good teams, good units, have you got enough in your armor to be able to affect it? And inevitably, England didn't. But that's not to say England played crap last night, because I don't think they did. I felt like they played well enough to at least get the draw. Don't think they did enough to get a win, but they did enough to get themselves at least a draw and take it into extra time. And then, as we know, anything can happen, you know, potentially from there. But, you know, we move. Let me know in the comments, guys. What do you guys think? Where do England really go from here? You know, to be honest with you, do they sack, you know, Gareth Southgate? Do they get someone else in? Is it now bon voyage? Like, what is it, man? Guys, let me know in the comments. That's me and my preview done. England are out of the World Cup at the quarterfinal stage, 2-1 defeat to France. Let me also know in the comments, guys, who would you guys like to see win the World Cup? We've got Morocco, we've got France, we've got Argentina versus Croatia. So again, this World Cup's been so crazy. I've stuck with my predictions. I'm going to predict that someone's going to win the World Cup. How about that? How about that? That's my prediction, you know, for the rest of the tournament. maybe I'm thinking it's going to end up being an Mbappe versus Messi final, but Morocco could upset that. So we'll wait and see. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm G, and I'm out.